This man survived going over Niagara Falls in a barrel, but an orange peel on a sidewalk was what ultimately killed him. Another guy, sentenced to the electric chair, dodged execution, only to die while trying to fix his TV. Throughout history, there have been countless ways people have met their end. But some deaths are so bizarre and unexpected that they almost seem like a joke. These are the most anticlimactic deaths in human history. Let's start with Major General John Sedgwick, a brave leader in the Union Army during the Civil War. Sedgwick was tough, leading his men through some of the war's hardest battles, like Antietam and Gettysburg. He had survived multiple injuries, but have you ever heard of someone pushing their luck too far? Sedgwick did just that. On May 9, 1864, during the Battle of Spotsylvania Courthouse, his officers warned him to stay away from a nearby road because Confederate snipers were around. His reply? They couldn't hit an elephant at that distance. Seconds later, a sharpshooter's bullet hit him, proving that overconfidence can be deadly. Speaking of daring, let's talk about Bobby Leach, a man who loved danger. In 1911, Leach became famous as the first man to survive going over Niagara Falls in a barrel. Can you imagine the courage it took to do that? He did it and lived to tell the tale. But what do you think finally did him in? Another risky stunt? Surprisingly, no. In 1926, while on a trip in New Zealand, Leach slipped on an orange peel. Yes, an orange peel. He broke his leg, and what seemed like a minor injury turned serious when gangrene set in. Despite surviving Niagara Falls, a simple slip ended his life, showing that sometimes it's the little things that get you. Speaking of risk takers, have you ever heard of someone escaping death only to run right back into it? That's exactly what happened to Michael Anderson Godwin. In 1983, Godwin was sentenced to the electric chair for murder. But in 1989, he got lucky. His sentence was reduced to life in prison after a retrial. You'd think he would count his blessings, right? So how did he end up dying? The answer is almost too ironic to believe. One day, while sitting on a metal toilet in his cell, Godwin tried to fix his TV. He held a wire in his mouth and, in a tragic twist, accidentally electrocuted himself. The man who avoided the electric chair ended up dying by electrocution anyway. It's as if fate had other plans for him. Next, we have Clement Vallandigham, a lawyer who died while trying to prove his point. Vallandigham was known for his strong opinions, so strong that during the Civil War, President Abraham Lincoln exiled him for supporting the Confederacy. After the war, Vallandigham went back to practicing law, but his dedication led to his tragic end. Have you ever wondered how far someone would go to win a case? In 1871, Vallandigham was defending a man accused of murder during a bar fight. To prove that the victim might have accidentally shot himself, Vallandigham decided to reenact the situation using the real gun involved. What happened next? Unfortunately, Vallandigham accidentally shot himself in the stomach while demonstrating his theory. He died shortly after, but his client was acquitted, making Vallandigham's last act both tragic and ironic. But what if you escaped from death row, only to die by your own hands later? That's exactly what Troy Leon Gregg did. In 1973, Gregg was convicted of murder and sentenced to death, but he wasn't ready to give up. On July 28, 1980, Gregg and 3 other inmates escaped from Georgia State Prison by sawing through their cell bars and disguising themselves as guards. It seemed like a perfect plan, but what do you think happened next? After escaping, Gregg decided to celebrate his freedom at a bar. But his celebration didn't last long. He got into a fight with some bikers and was killed. Gregg managed to escape the death penalty, only to meet his end in a bar fight, showing that you can't always escape your fate. But have you ever heard the saying, "Pride comes before the fall"? Bando Mitsugoro, a famous Japanese actor, learned this lesson the hard way. In 1975, Mitsugoro wanted to prove that he was immune to the deadly poison found in pufferfish, known as fugu. Fugu is a delicacy in Japan, but it's also very dangerous. One wrong bite could be fatal. So what do you think happened when Mitsugoro ate the liver, the most toxic part of the fish? Despite his confidence, Mitsugoro wasn't immune to the poison. 7 hours after eating the fugu liver, he died. It's a classic example of overconfidence leading to disaster, and a reminder that some risks just aren't worth taking, no matter how invincible you feel. Next, we have a story that's both tragic and ironic. In 1985, the lifeguards in New Orleans were celebrating a successful summer with no drownings. They threw a party at a local swimming pool, inviting about 100 lifeguards and their guests. You'd think a pool full of lifeguards would be the safest place to be, right? So, what could go wrong? As the party was ending and guests were leaving, the lifeguards found the body of 31-year-old Jerome Moody at the bottom of the pool. Somehow, during the celebration, Moody had drowned. It's a shocking reminder that even when you're surrounded by experts, accidents can still happen. Who would have thought that a pool full of lifeguards could be the site of such a tragedy? Speaking of people whose pride led to their downfall, let's take a look at Hans Steininger, a man known for his incredibly long beard, which measured over 17 feet. Steininger lived in the 16th century in a small Austrian town, and his beard was famous in the area. He usually kept it tucked away in a leather pouch to avoid accidents, but one day, he forgot. So, what do you think happened next? A fire broke out in the town, and in the rush to escape, Steininger's beard unraveled. He tripped over it while running down the stairs, breaking his neck and dying instantly. It's a strange case where something as simple as a beard, something Steininger was so proud of, ended up causing his death. Before we continue with more strange deaths, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. You won't want to miss out on more fascinating and bizarre tales like these. Now let's go back to ancient Greece for a story about Aeschylus, the father of Greek tragedy. Aeschylus believed deeply in prophecies and received one that said he would die from a blow to the head by a falling object. So, what would you do if you were him? Aeschylus decided to stay outside as much as possible to avoid anything falling from a building. But what do you think ended up happening? While Aeschylus was outside, an eagle flying overhead with a tortoise in its claws made a mistake. The eagle was looking for a rock to drop the tortoise on to crack it open, but mistook Aeschylus's bald head for a rock. The tortoise fell and hit Aeschylus on the head, killing him instantly and fulfilling the prophecy in the most unexpected way. While we're on the subject of ancient Greece, let's talk about Pyrrhus of Epirus. Pyrrhus was a Greek king whose many costly military victories against the Romans and Macedonians led to the phrase Pyrrhic victory. It was a time when Greek rulers led their troops from the front, often directly participating in battles to set the example. So, what happened to him? During the Battle of Argos in 272 BCE, Pyrrhus was trapped with his army among the narrow streets of the city. While he was busy fighting an enemy soldier, the soldier's elderly mother threw a tile at Pyrrhus, striking him on the head and knocking him from his horse. Pyrrhus died shortly after, slain in battle thanks to the throwing skills of an old woman. It just goes to show that no matter how hard you try, you can't always escape your fate. We can't forget to mention Gary Hoy, a lawyer from Toronto with a strange habit. Hoy worked in a high-rise office building and liked to show off the strength of the building's windows by running into them. He had done this several times before without any problems, so why would this time be different? But have you ever heard of someone pushing their luck one too many times? On July 9, 1993, Hoy was giving a tour of the office to some students and decided to perform his usual trick. He ran at the window with full force, expecting it to hold up as it always had. Did the glass break? No, it stayed intact. But here's the thing. The entire window frame popped out of the wall and Hoy fell 24 floors to his death. Finally, we've got a story about a medical mishap. Gouverneur Morris, one of the founding fathers of the United States, and the man who wrote the final draft of the U.S. Constitution, met a rather unfortunate end. In 1816, Morris had a painful urinary tract blockage. Back then, medical knowledge wasn't very advanced, so Morris had to choose: trust the local doctors who weren't always reliable, or try to fix it himself. What do you think he did? Morris, being resourceful, decided to try and fix the problem himself using a piece of whalebone. But instead of solving the problem, he made it worse, leading to an infection that quickly spread. Despite being such an influential figure, Morris couldn't escape the consequences of his decision and died from the infection. It's a sobering reminder that even the smartest people can make fatal mistakes when it comes to their health. Which of these anticlimactic deaths shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, make sure to check out some of our other videos on strange and fascinating historical events. And remember, life is unpredictable, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like these.